I never thought swimming alone at night could be dangerous. Foolish, I know, but back then, the lake always felt like mine. It was where I went to clear my head, where I went when the world felt too heavy. The stillness of the water at night gave me a strange kind of comfort. No boats, no kids splashing around, no buzzing jet skis. Just the moon, the water, and me. That night, I parked my truck by the usual gravel pull-off and slipped down the dirt path with a towel over my shoulder. The air smelled faintly of pine and wet earth, the kind of smell you only really notice when it's late and quiet. I remember thinking how peaceful it was. Even the crickets seemed to be humming a lullaby instead of chirping. I left my clothes on the dock and waded in, the water swallowing me slowly, cool against my skin. The moonlight shimmered across the lake like a silver path stretching to the far side. I dove under, came back up, and started swimming toward the center. I wasn't racing, just gliding, enjoying the rhythm of my arms and the sound of water breaking around me. And then I saw him. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, just a ripple catching the moon. But the shape was too steady, too deliberate. A head bobbing in the distance, maybe 30 yards away. Someone else was out there, swimming. It struck me as odd because I'd never seen anyone out here at this hour before. This wasn't exactly a public beach. The parking area was empty when I pulled in. So where the hell had he come from? I stopped and treaded water, squinting. The figure seemed to be floating, motionless, watching. I called out, half joking, half nervous. "Hey!" Didn't think anyone else was crazy enough to swim out here at night. No answer. The man just floated there, his face turned toward me. My pulse quickened, but I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was ignoring me. Maybe he was drunk and zoning out. Lakeside cabins dotted the woods further north. He could have stumbled down from one of them. I turned back and started swimming again, slower this time. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. The man was closer. He hadn't splashed. I hadn't heard him stroke the water, but the gap between us had shrunk. I tried to keep calm, counting each stroke, but the sound of water moving behind me made my chest tighten. I stopped, spun around. He was right there, no more than 15 feet away, staring straight at me. His head tilted, just slightly, the way a dog tilts its head when it hears something. Only this didn't feel curious. It felt wrong. "Look, man," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "You're kind of freaking me out. Can you give me some space?" Still no response. He dipped under the surface. For a split second, I thought maybe he'd just turned away, but then something brushed my foot. My body jolted with electricity. He was under me. I kicked hard, panicked, my leg thrashing against something solid, a shoulder, an arm, I don't know. The water churned, bubbles erupting around me as I tried to get away. Then a hand clamped around my ankle. I screamed, swallowed water, and kicked with my free leg. I caught him. I felt the bone of his cheek or jaw under my heel. The grip loosened. I tore upward, lungs burning, and broke the surface, gasping. The dock was far, maybe too far. But adrenaline makes distances lie. I swam harder than I ever had, arms slicing through water, every nerve screaming. Behind me, I heard splashes he was following. I didn't dare look back. My whole body was shaking, my mind screaming, just keep going, keep going. When my hands finally slammed against the wood of the dock, I hauled myself up so fast I scraped my knees raw. I rolled onto the planks, coughing, choking, water pouring out of my nose. For a moment, I just lay there, chest heaving, too terrified to move. Then I looked. He was in the water, only a few yards away, treading effortlessly. Moonlight glistened off his face, pale and expressionless. He didn't shout, didn't climb up, just hovered there, eyes locked on mine. I scrambled back, grabbed my clothes, and bolted barefoot down the dirt path. My legs screamed with every step, but I didn't stop until I reached my truck. As I threw myself inside and slammed the lock, I caught one last glimpse through the windshield. The man was standing on the dock now, dripping wet, still staring. I peeled out, gravel spitting behind me, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the wheel. I never went back to that lake, not once. And yet, sometimes when I close my eyes, I can feel water closing over my head, taste it flooding my throat. I can feel that hand tightening on my ankle, pulling me down. I tell myself it was just some drunk, some lunatic messing with me. But deep down, I know it wasn't random. He didn't want to scare me. He wanted to drown me. And worst of all, he could still be out there, waiting for the next idiot who thinks swimming alone at night is safe. I've always believed that the woods feel different at night. Not just darker, not just quieter, but different. Like they're watching you, holding their breath until you pass through. That thought was already heavy in my mind when I found myself out there, on the far side of the lake, standing in front of a cabin that I swear hadn't been there the year before. It was the second week of my stay at the lake house. I'd rented it to get away from work, from the constant city noise, from people. I thought solitude would be healing. Days were fine swimming, fishing, reading on the dock, but nights were harder. Every creak of the trees, every ripple on the water seemed magnified. It didn't help that I sometimes felt like someone was watching me from the woods. A shifting shadow, a crunch of leaves, just out of sight. That evening, just before dusk, I decided to take a walk along a trail that wrapped around the lake. The air was damp and smelled like pine and earth, and I carried only a flashlight and a bottle of water. I'd walked this loop once before during the day, but at night the path looked unfamiliar, twisted, more overgrown. That's when I saw it. Through the trees, a shape rose up a roofline, slanted and broken, with a faint curl of smoke coming from a crooked chimney. My first thought was, how did I miss this before? I'd walked the same path last week and seen nothing but trees. Now, standing just beyond a thicket of saplings, was a cabin. It looked abandoned, but not old enough to be forgotten. The porch sagged, the windows were smudged with grime, but there were footprints in the mud leading up to the door. Fresh ones. I should have turned back right there, but curiosity is its own kind of trap. I told myself maybe someone lived there seasonally, maybe a fisherman or a hunter. Maybe I just stumbled on a neighbor. I was too far from my rental to ask questions, and too unsettled to ignore it. I stepped closer. The cabin had no electricity, at least no light inside, but I could see the faint flicker of a lantern through a crack in the curtains. The smell of smoke was stronger, mingled with something else, something like meat cooking. I crept up to the side window and tried to peek inside. The glass was too dirty, so I wiped a circle with my sleeve. What I saw still makes my stomach twist. A man sat at a wooden table. His hair was long, greasy, matted against his neck. He wore a flannel shirt that looked damp and torn at the sleeves. On the table in front of him were knives, different sizes, lined up in a row, and next to them, what looked like animal bones. At least, I hoped they were animal bones. He was carving something with a steady, deliberate rhythm, muttering under his breath. I froze. My heart hammered so loud I thought he'd hear it. My body screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Then, as if sensing me, the man stopped. His head tilted slightly, and he sniffed the air like an animal catching a scent. Slowly, he turned toward the window. I dropped down under the sill just in time. I crouched there, my face pressed against the damp wood of the cabin, holding my breath. Inside, the chair scraped back. I heard footsteps. Heavy, slow, moving toward the door. I ran. Branches whipped at my arms as I tore down the trail, not caring about the noise I made, not caring if I tripped. My flashlight beam jittered wildly, throwing shadows in every direction. Behind me, I swear I heard another set of footsteps pounding the dirt. I didn't look back. It felt like forever before I saw the faint glow of my own cabin through the trees. I stumbled up the steps, slammed the door, locked it, and leaned against it, chest heaving. The silence pressed in. For the next hour, I sat by the window, lights off, staring out into the tree line. I thought maybe I'd imagined it all. Maybe it was just a recluse living quietly in the woods. Maybe I was projecting my own fears. Then I saw him. At the edge of the clearing, just where the trees began, a figure stood, motionless. His silhouette was unmistakable, the same flannel shirt, the same wild hair. He didn't move, didn't call out, just stood there, watching my cabin. I sat frozen, hand over my mouth, until eventually, sometime past midnight, he was gone. The next morning, I retraced my steps in daylight, determined to prove to myself that I'd overreacted. But when I reached the spot, the cabin wasn't there. No chimney, no porch, no smoke, just trees and underbrush. But the footprints remained, fresh ones, circling the spot where I'd been standing the night before. And they weren't mine. I never used to be afraid of the lake. When I first came here, I thought of it as peaceful, almost cleansing. The way the water reflected the sky, the way the mist clung to the surface in the early morning, it all felt like an escape. But after everything I'd already experienced, the swimmer in the dark, and that strange cabin that seemed to appear and disappear at will, I couldn't look at the lake the same way anymore. It felt tainted, like the still surface was hiding something just beneath, waiting for me to let my guard down. Still, I forced myself to keep a routine. That was my defense, pretending nothing had changed. Wake up, make coffee, sit on the dock with a book, take a swim when the sun warmed the water enough. Except I wasn't reading anymore. I wasn't even swimming. I just sat there, staring out at the water, waiting for something to happen. And one morning, it did. It was early, maybe 6 a.m. The fog was thick, curling in low sheets across the lake like smoke. I remember thinking how it made everything feel smaller, like the world ended 20 feet out. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the fog, a shape materializing and shifting the way shadows do in mist. But then the shape sharpened, a man standing knee-deep in the water, holding a fishing pole. His back was to me, shoulders stiff under a faded jacket, head tilted slightly as though listening. I'd never seen anyone fish this close to my side of the lake. Most people launched boats from the public dock a mile away. He wasn't in a boat. He wasn't on the shore. He was just standing there in the shallows, perfectly still. I watched for a while, waiting for him to cast or reel or even adjust his stance. He didn't. He stood there so long that the fog began to thin, sunlight piercing through in broken shafts. That's when I noticed something strange. There was no ripple around him. The water lapped against my dock, moved with the breeze, but around his legs it was glassy, unmoving. Finally, I called out, "Hey, you okay out there?" My voice carried across the water, echoing back faintly from the trees. The man didn't turn, didn't acknowledge me at all. Something about his stillness unsettled me more than if he'd shouted back. I stood, hesitated, then walked to the end of the dock, trying again. "You're on private property, you know. This side of the lake isn't public." Again, nothing. Just that rigid back, the fishing pole angled slightly forward, line vanishing into the mist. I should have gone inside. Should have locked the doors and stayed put, But curiosity has a way of convincing you that danger is just imagination. So I climbed into the little rowboat tied at the dock and pushed off. The oars creaked with every pull, the water sloshing quietly. The closer I got, the stranger it felt. My chest tightened, my skin prickled. I couldn't see his face yet, but I could make out more details. His jacket was soaked through, hanging heavy on his frame, and his fishing pole wasn't moving at all. The line didn't even seem taut, like it had no weight on it. When I was maybe 20 feet away, I cleared my throat and said, louder this time, "Hey, you're trespassing. Do you live around here?" Slowly, painfully slow, the man turned his head. I wish he hadn't. His face was pale, almost gray, like he hadn't seen the sun in years. His eyes were wide, unfocused, staring past me as if I weren't there. And his mouth hung slightly open, as though mid-breath, but no sound came out. I froze, hands gripping the oars. Then he did something I'll never forget. Without a word, without blinking, he raised one arm and pointed, not at me, not at the shore, but at the far end of the lake, where the fog was still thick. I turned to look, squinting into the mist. Nothing but gray. When I looked back, he was gone. I don't mean he walked away. I don't mean he sank. He was just gone. No splash, no ripple, no trace of movement. The water where he'd been standing was calm as glass. Panic surged through me. I rowed back so fast the boat rocked violently, nearly flipping. By the time I stumbled onto the dock, gasping, the fog had thinned enough to see the far shore, and that's when I noticed something else. A cabin. Not the same one I'd seen before, but another this one, tucked back in the trees, smaller, with a crooked pier jutting into the lake. And on that pier stood a figure, watching me. I blinked, and the fog closed in again, swallowing the sight whole. For the rest of the day, I stayed inside, curtains drawn, doors locked. But even now, I can't shake the image of that man in the water. His silence was louder than any scream. His stare wasn't directed at me, but through me, like I was already part of whatever he was pointing to. And I don't think it was a warning. I think it was an invitation. I thought I'd gotten used to the lake by then. After everything, the swimmer in the dark, the stranger's cabin, the silent fisherman, I told myself I couldn't be surprised anymore. But the lake has this way of proving you wrong. Just when you think you've seen the worst it has to offer, it shows you a new angle, a new trick, another reason not to close your eyes at night. This happened in late afternoon, when the light is gold and heavy, hanging on the water like a film. I was sitting on the dock, legs dangling just above the surface, when I heard the sound of paddles cutting water. Not the steady rhythm of a practiced kayaker, but something uneven fast, then slow, then fast again, like the person didn't know where they were going. I shaded my eyes and saw him, a man in a red kayak, not too far from shore. He wasn't dressed for it, no life jacket, no gear, just a dark hoodie pulled low over his face, sleeves soaked, dripping as he paddled clumsily in wide, erratic circles. At first, I thought he was drunk. People drank at the lake all the time, and sometimes they did stupid things. But something about him made me hesitate. He wasn't looking around, wasn't laughing or yelling like drunk kayakers usually did. His head stayed bent low, eyes fixed on the water right in front of him, like he was searching for something below the surface. I called out without thinking, "Hey, you okay out there?" His head snapped up so fast it startled me. For the first time, I saw his face clearly. Pale, gaunt, lips pressed tight. He didn't answer, just stared at me. And then he began to paddle toward the dock. The way he moved it was too fast, too forceful, water spraying up with each stroke. He wasn't circling anymore. He was coming directly at me. I stood quickly, heart pounding, trying to act casual, but every instinct screamed to back away. "Doc's private property," I said, forcing my voice steady. "If you need help, I can call someone." He didn't stop. Closer now, I could hear his breathing ragged, uneven. His eyes locked on mine, unblinking. And then, when he was maybe 10 feet away, he stopped paddling altogether. The kayak drifted, rocking gently in the ripples. That's when I noticed. There was no paddle in his hands anymore. I don't even remember seeing him drop it. He just sat there, empty-handed, staring, the kayak rocking under him. The silence stretched until I couldn't take it anymore. "What do you want?" I asked. He opened his mouth. For a moment, I thought he might answer. But instead, he leaned forward, reached into the water with both hands, and plunged them deep beneath the surface. I froze. He held them there, submerged, like he was trying to grab something from the depths. The kayak wobbled violently, threatening to tip, but he didn't stop. His hoodie darkened with water, his breathing louder, harsher. Then, just as suddenly, he sat back. His hands were empty. His face was blank. And without a sound, the kayak began to drift backward, away from the dock. Not paddled, not steered, just drifting, as though pulled by some invisible current. I stood rooted to the spot, watching as he faded into the middle of the lake. The golden light made him look less like a man and more like a shadow sitting atop the water. Finally, the fog began to roll in, curling low across the surface, and within seconds he was gone. No splash, no trace, no sound of paddles hitting water. The kayak had simply vanished into the mist. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the cabin, every brush of wind against the window felt like footsteps approaching. And when I finally gathered the courage to look outside, the lake was calm, empty, reflecting only the moon. But I swear, deep in the silence, I heard the faint drip of water against wood, like a paddle lifted from the lake. And even now, I wonder, was he searching for something in that water? Or was he waiting for someone else to join him?